Welcome in. It is the Chico Bormann Show here on the Big Play Sports Network. Great to have you along. Follow us on Twitter at Chico Show CLE. Also following live on YouTube. If you are not a subscriber yet, go to YouTube, type in the Chico Bormann Show, hit subscribe, and you'll be all set to go. Big show for you today. Coming up in a bit, we're going to talk to Eric Edholm. He is with NFL.com and the NFL Network, live from Mobile, Alabama. The Senior Bowl going on, so a lot of hot draft prospects, and we'll get the latest from that. But also just in general, a lot of news. With the coaching carousel ended, Dan Quinn is now the coach for the Washington Commanders. So the coaching carousel has ended. No Bill Belichick. We'll get into all of that. Also, championship weekend is over, and the Super Bowl 58 is now ready to roll in Vegas. So we'll talk to Eric about that and much, much more. But a lot going on over in Berea. We've got some news today. Not long ago that Bill Callahan indeed will be leaving the Browns. There was the thought he could possibly be doing that. Brian Callahan, his son, was with Cincinnati, now gets the head coaching job, and he will be poaching Pops to come coach the O-line with the Tennessee Titans. So we'll get into some of that. We also have NBA news. The Cavaliers, wow, again, another victory. Jared Allen has the double-double streak snapped kind of in a ridiculous way, but still the Cavaliers, okay, it wasn't pretty, but you're on the second night of that back-to-back. They find a way. They've won 12 out of 13, and that's the good news in hoops. The bad news, I'm going to get to that later in the show as well. The Ohio State Buckeyes and Chris Holtmann, my oh my. You think I'm too patient with guys? No way. Coming up next, we're going to break right now. When we come back, again, live from Mobile, Alabama, the very latest, not only with the draft prospects in the Senior Bowl, but all around the NFL. He's Eric Edholm, NFL.com and the NFL Network, right here on the Chico Bormann Show on the Big Play Sports Network. And welcome back here on this Friday edition of the Chico Bormann Show here on the Big Play Sports Network. Great to have you along. And, of course, NFL season winding down. Yes, we are to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 58 will take place next week, not this weekend. I think we're all going to be kind of wondering what we're going to do with ourselves. But a lot to keep plenty of people occupied if you are fans of the draft, fans of NFL prospects. And this guy knows all about them. He's been in Mobile, Alabama, site of the Senior Bowl this week, where it always is in Alabama. He's Eric Edholm, NFL.com and the NFL Network. Mr. Edholm, always a pleasure. How you doing, pal?
Good morning from Mobile. What's going on?
You know, it looks, I've been seeing some, I think Nagy's been posting, Jim Nagy, the executive director, has been posting a lot of the sunrises there. It looks picturesque, dare I say it.
Yes.
I don't.
I have a wonderful view outside of my hotel room, and it's been glorious to wake up every day to a southern sunrise, a little different look. I've been in the Chicago shade for I don't know 3 months now, so getting a tan this week was not on my list, but I'm happy to have it.
Good deal. All right, so let's get right to it. I mean, one of the things that that is being talked about a great deal in regards to the Senior Bowl is 106, and that would be the number. I think it's been tied of players that have been drafted that participated in the Senior Bowl and Senior Bowl week. Do we think this year it has a possibility of being broken, that record?
I don't think so. If I had to, well, that's a tough question. Maybe a lot of players had to bow out this week, so I think the bottom end of talent may not be quite as strong as it was a year ago. So they've had to go a little bit farther down their list. I expected it to be the other way, just based on the fact that the NFLPA game is no longer, and a couple of the All-Star games have shut down. So it's really only 3 games now: Hula Bowl, East West, and Senior Bowl. So I thought coming into the season we would end up having more of a stronger crop here, but I think some postseason injuries and agents being a little nervous, pulling their guys out, things like that, it hasn't been quite as strong a talent pool. So I think they might come close, maybe not surpass that number.
Eric Edholm joining us from Mobile, Alabama, site of the Senior Bowl. He and Lance Zierlein doing great work for NFL.com. Both of those guys chiming in all this week as far as their thoughts, their impressions. And Eric, one recurring theme, not just with you guys, but it seemed everybody that was down there, that has been down there, is Roman Wilson has looked outstanding for Michigan. And there's a guy not far here from Cleveland in Toledo, Quinyon Mitchell. Can you just kind of touch on them and some of the other highlights that you guys have seen as far as players that have stood out?
Wilson had the best day one, I think, of the he and Lad McConkey from Georgia, and both kind of smaller, quicker guys who create fast separation. And Wilson was a really tough cover day one. He is not playing in the game Saturday. He bowed out yesterday. Don't know I have a suspicion what the injury was, but I don't know for sure. But yeah, Quinyon Mitchell's really probably been if not the best defensive player down here, the second best. I mean, it's between he and Darius Robinson from Missouri probably. And Mitchell has looked the part. I mean, as far as, stepping up against big competition, we know in the MAC, he would occasionally, play some Big Ten schools and some upper competition. But the last 2 years, he's been terrific. He's got like 37 passes defended, 6 picks, really been a ball hawk. Teams did try to stay away from him this year a little bit, but there's no hiding at the Senior Bowl. And the only guy who got him was Wilson after Mitchell kind of fell down on 1 rep on day one. So, I would say he's done as much as anybody to help himself. And I think he was already kind of a top 40 selection coming in. So, maybe he's corner one. Maybe he's the second one off the board. I mean, I think he's going to go pretty darn high.
So it just kind of set the stage for folks that don't understand it. Like the Senior Bowl game, the actual All-Star game itself is Saturday, is tomorrow. Right. We're broadcasting, or we're taping on Friday, but it is tomorrow. But Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is really, I mean, these are big days for these guys. And kind of take us through, like, there's individual drills. Like, what's going on during those 3 days?
Yeah, it looks like a football practice, but it's obviously a little bit of a different setup. 100+ players come in town, and, guys come and go. As I said, some only stay for a day or two, depending on, health, things like that. But basically, they are thrown together on Sunday night. They get a crash course on a shell of an offense. They learn, basic concepts. They install, a few dozen plays, basically. And then they go into these individual drills, obviously the offensive and defensive linemen, the receivers and the corners, the, backs and tight ends against the safeties and linebackers, things like that. So you get to see, and that's really what the scouts come for. Right? I think Tuesday through Thursday are the 3 most important days. Not that the game doesn't matter, but most scouts are out of town now. I'm one of the few stragglers as I stay for the game. And, we do a content sharing deal with the game, and it's a cool game. But they're bringing back all the legends from the 75th anniversary team. But really, the scouts are here for meetings, interviews, and also watching the practice and the interaction between the players. So they get 2 hours every day of watching these guys compete. Now, it's obviously not 2 hours straight, but you get a pretty darn good feel watching them in person and seeing who the players are.
Eric, you mentioned the scouts. Are the owners, like, I picture this, I mean, I don't know how long they stay, but I would think every owner probably makes an appearance, right? Or am I wrong?
The only one I've ever seen down here that I can think of now, some have probably been in town for coach interviews or GM interviews or things like that, but the only one who makes consistent appearances down here that I'm aware of is Jerry Jones. And I've seen the Cowboys bus here, and they've made their way into the dive bars that the writers and the locals hang out in. So it's quite a spectacle to see a guy of Jerry's pull and wealth and all that be here. But yeah, a lot of head coaches lately have skipped these things. Some of them are interviewing candidates for OC jobs and whatnot. And, some guys have said, we can watch the practice tape at home. We don't need to see them up close. There are quite a few GMs and quite a few scouting directors, but not all of them. And I think that's been a big shift in recent years, that some teams place a higher emphasis on this week than others do.
Yeah, everybody knows Jerry's there by the bus. So I have to ask you, have you ever been inside the bus, or is that like sacred territory?
No, I interviewed his bus driver once in Indianapolis for the combine though, and that was one of my favorite stories. And I was like, do you have to, sign a non-disclosure? He's like, oh yeah. Like whoever comes on, whoever gets off, mum's the word. They don't talk about that. There's no, whatever happens on Jerry's bus stays on Jerry's bus. That's the kind of thing. And it takes up like half a city block, Chico. I mean, this thing is absolutely massive. So if you're ever lucky enough to be in the presence of it, it draws a crowd, and the driver often takes pictures with people. He's like a semi-celebrity in these NFL parts.
Well, you know what's interesting, and we'll move on after this, but there's going to be, I think Jerry is featured in some kind of docuseries. I don't know if it's Netflix or Amazon, something.
Okay.
And I almost feel like, well, okay, if this is really going to be true, like remember with like Jordan and all those documentaries, like, okay, how much are we going to find out? I think he has to open up the bus. We have to see the bus, right?
Get the bus cam. Like that's the footage you want in
Yes.
any kind of Jerry Jones documentary. I think that would be the uncut raw footage that would push it over the top, I think.
Our good buddy Eric Edholm, NFL.com. He and Lance Airline doing great work for NFL.com all week at the Senior Bowl. Joins us from Mobile. One of the things I always love asking you is with all of the the scouts and different NFL executives and stuff down there all week. What's been the hot topic outside of just the Senior Bowl, like coaching or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I think there's been two things that have been kind of, obviously besides the scouting stuff that I'm hearing on the players. I would say the Ben Johnson's decision to return to the Lions probably created the biggest ripple among the crowd. We've had some big news stories break over the years, usually coaching news or something like that during Senior Bowl practices, and occasionally you can hear kind of a ripple through the crowd as they check their phones and word kind of spreads. And I think that was kind of a big one. I think a lot of people expected that that Ben would take the job, team up with Adam Peters, start a new day in Washington. So that was a big one. And I think just talking to some of the guys in the agent business, in the scouting business and the coaching business, there's been a lot of talk about how many college coaches are fleeing college football and all the craziness of the transfer portal and NIL and how unregulated everything is. If there's an NFL offer out there, they're listening. I mean, that's the way it is. And I think college football needs to understand that there is a coaching talent problem that may exist that could affect their game. And guys don't want to put up with they're hired to teach how to disengage from blocks and how to get off press coverage, not how to recruit players, re-recruit them, line up NIL deals. It's just beyond their purview in a lot of cases. And I think guys are saying, I do well, but I didn't get, I don't really want to get paid for this.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up because immediately my mind went to the latest story with Jeff Hafley. And I mean, okay, I know BC isn't, one of the top programs in the country, but here's a guy who probably made, I'm totally guessing here, I don't know, 3-4 million a year, but he goes to Green Bay and it's probably a pay cut, but how many of these guys, like you just mentioned, if they're not walking away entirely, they're saying enough of this. I mean, it's a problem right now in the NCAA.
I think it's a lifestyle problem and the amount of time that's required to commit to. I mean, there's no off season. There used to be kind of a rhythm and a cadence to the college football season. Okay, this is a dead period for recruiting, and this is when I can take the family on vacation and kind of get away, and I don't have to do media hits and all that. And it just feels like it's becoming an 11.5-month business, and constantly worrying about what the next thing they're going to have to deal with is, and with a completely open portal, basically. I mean, that's sort of the reality of the situation. And Jeff's a smart guy. I think he felt like he had maybe done everything he could at BC in 4 years, and they were bowl eligible, I think, 3 of the 4 years. And like you said, not a top tier program, not a great program, but you can win there, right? And now he was an interesting hire. He come from Ohio State, obviously, and had a great training there, but also had some NFL background too. And he's maybe got the goods if he brings this Green Bay team to a Super Bowl as the DC. Could be an NFL head coach one day. Smart, obviously very good in front of a camera, knows X's and O's, understands the difference between pro and college. What you have to do to win in those two different sports. There really are. I mean, there really are two different games. But still, to your point, taking that big a pay cut, understanding that like this is maybe for a short-term dip for long-term preservation in his mind, which is crazy because NFL coaches still work their butts off.
Yep. No, it's very well said. You're right. Talking to Eric Edholm, a few more minutes with him with NFL.com. So the head coaching carousel has ended. Dan Quinn is the new head coach of the Washington Commanders. You mentioned earlier one of the big stories, Ben Johnson saying no and staying with Detroit. Would that count as your biggest surprise of this entire coaching carousel with it now over after Quinn accepts the Washington job?
Yeah, I think that's probably the most seismic move as far as obviously not having Pete Carroll and Bill Belichick in the coaching realm is a surprise, and I think there are probably other ones too. I would say that the most scrutinized hire was Dave Canales going to the Carolina Panthers, and we knew it was going to be a tough sell based on how ownership was perceived. Bryce Young had a rough season. They were the worst record in football this year. There's some things working against them in that hire, but Dave's a young guy. He's been through some stuff in the past. He's been very candid about it and his personal struggles. Very talented offensive coach, but it took him a while to kind of work up the hierarchy in Seattle. Gets the opportunity in Tampa, has some pretty good success with Baker Mayfield and the Bucs, but now he's taken the big step up to being head coach. So that's another one that I think some people are wondering, how's he going to handle it? It's hard to know. That's a tough job right there. So he's got a lot on his plate as well.
I'm curious, just my opinion as far as Bill Belichick, and look, the guy might very well be and go down as the best ever. I wasn't surprised, Eric, after the Cowboys and after the Eagles both decided to keep their coaches, because I felt like if you're looking long term, he's probably not going to be the guy that you're ultimately going with. Fair or not?
Yeah, right. I mean, is he going to coach till he's 80? That's the question. And yeah, I think Jerry Jones has obviously shown a lot more patience in recent years, and kept Jason Garrett around for much longer than people expected in some cases, and really it hasn't been since the early part of the 2000s that you can say he's been an impatient owner as far as coaching hires and stuff. So yeah, I mean that I think when Atlanta was really interesting, but the hang up was always how would Bill handle reporting to Rich McKay and also having Terry Fontenot as the GM there. Even though he'd made it known I'd be willing to relinquish some player control as far as personnel goes, I still think he wanted a hand in decision making and wasn't going to get carte blanche there. So that was the big hang up. And look, I think the Cowboys are still going to be a team to watch next year if McCarthy fails, but it could be over. I mean, this could be the end of the ride.
Eric, real quick, as far as the NFC Championship game and, of course, the Super Bowl now is all set, Kansas City and San Francisco. It seems like a wild variety of opinions on Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions and the decisions to go for it. Where do you come out on those two big calls? Obviously the 4th and 2 when they're up 14 and then 4th and 3 down 3.
Yeah, I mean, I see both sides of it. I just know that the actions he took in that game, A, were consistent with how they've played all season long, and B, sort of spoke to a lack of trust in their kicker, Michael Badgley. They had to cut Riley Patterson late in the season. It was a little bit of a surprise. I didn't think he'd been bad, but I don't think they really fully trusted him, and kind of speaks to the expectations for kickers these days. They have to be 85% on field goals and 95 on extra points. That's, you have to be darn near perfect. So, there was even the possession before half when they did kick the field goal. Campbell admitted it was a little bit closer. They're probably going for it there and trying to score before the clock runs out. So again, I just felt like that was sort of consistent with what they did all year. Didn't shock me. And if you look at Badgley's numbers in that, mid 40 to high 40-yard field goal range, he hasn't been great in his career. So to me, the fumble by Gibbs and then giving up the big catch to Ayuk were the more damaging plays. But, and again, if he calls for a field goal and they miss it, did he make the right call? That's you have to understand that there is the risk of failure no matter which path you choose. So I didn't hate it as much as much as a lot of people did. I thought, it was painful to watch, but really that fumble was when the floodgates opened and they started dropping passes and it looked like they came unglued a little bit.
We'll get you out of here with this, buddy. Early impressions. I know you've been in Mobile all week, but early impressions for Super Bowl 58 with Kansas City and San Francisco.
I hate to boil it down to such a simple factor, but it's going to be really hard for me to pick against Patrick Mahomes and to think that in this season, arguably his worst as a NFL quarterback, that this is the year that I'm saying I couldn't pick against him is a little bit rich, but we know how he is. And we know, Kelsey's cranked it up. He didn't have his best regular season either, but Kyle Hamilton's going to shut me down. Great. I'll just go catch a touchdown over him, and I mean, I'm not saying that San Francisco can't win this game. They have some dogs, but if they can't stop Isaiah Pacheco in the run game and can't do something to force Mahomes' hand a little bit and put him in a stressful position, I don't think they're going to be able to win this football game. So right now I'm kind of leaning Chiefs, but they're also dealing with Charles Omenihu being out, Joe Thuney being a long shot for the Super Bowl. They're thinned out a little bit.
One of the best in the business, Eric Edholm, NFL.com from Mobile, Alabama, site of the Senior Bowl. Safe travels, my friend. Always a pleasure to catch up with you. Great stuff as always. Thank you, bud.
You got it. See you, buddy.
All right. That is, again, Eric Edholm. And a couple things that I want to touch on when we come back that he had to say regarding the championship games from last week. But also, when we come back, we've got some Browns news, not only the Ken Dorsey news and that hire, which happened last weekend, but we've got news breaking today in terms of Bill Callahan and the offensive line, and great job that he's done with the offensive line. Would Brian Callahan, his son, take him with him to Tennessee? There was some thought, no, he's staying where he's at. Well, we've got an update there. We'll come back with that. More of the Chico Bormann Show. More to come right here on the Big Play Sports Network. All righty, welcome back. Chico Bormann Show here on the Big Play Sports Network. Glad to have you along. You can follow us on Twitter at Chico Show CLE. Also over on YouTube, the Chico Bormann Show. Follow us there. Subscribe there if you are not already. Good stuff with Eric Edholm. I love talking to him each and every year from Mobile. And one of the things I always ask that question, like, what is the hot topic other than, the players and the scouts and what's, Roman Wilson at Michigan and others that are being looked at, and top players that are being looked at for the draft. What is being talked about around in the NFL circles about the draft and coaching carousel, and you heard him say Ben Johnson right away. I mean, it is, as much as you say, like, good for him, it is a gamble because there's only so many of these gigs to go around. But at the same time, like, yeah, if you go to a place like Washington, it's who knows? I mean, there's no telling, how it's going to go. And while it is a risk, I think that's Ben Johnson gambling on himself and feeling like, hey, this Detroit team, we're going to run this back. I'll still have time to, to find there will always be openings, but, do they have injuries next year? Does his stock remain? His stock right now is sky high, which I thought was interesting because in addition to the Dan Campbell decisions, right, on fourth down. You can also bring Ben Johnson into that equation. Like, okay, it was Dan Campbell's job as head coach, and he made the decisions to go for it, those two big ones. But Ben Johnson called the pass plays. Should they have – now, one of them, Josh Reynolds, just dropped the ball. The other one, it was nowhere in sight. Josh Reynolds drops the ball. Like, you got to execute, right? You got to be that's not on Campbell. That's not on Johnson. You've got to catch the ball as a professional wide receiver. But I thought it was interesting, Ben Johnson, turning down those offers. And then, as we said, Dan Quinn wraps it up with the Washington Commanders taking that job. Now, one of the surprise hires, and I don't say this as Brian Callahan is not going to be a good coach at Tennessee, but I didn't really hear a lot of buzz surrounding Brian Callahan other than a Steelers fan who I needed to apologize to last week and will again when he said, hey, if Brian Callahan lands a head coaching job, don't be surprised if Father Bill goes with him. Now, Brian Callahan did get that job in Tennessee. Then I heard from folks, well, you know what? Don't worry about it. And Bohm, you heard it as well. Oh, don't worry about it. Bill's not going anywhere. Bill Callahan staying. And ultimately, he asked the Tennessee Titans, asked to interview him. What is, I mean, the Browns had to, of course, you allow that. That's a unique opportunity. So now they lose Bill Callahan. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, this is a, sky's falling. But the guy, especially this year, we've talked about all the injuries. And I know we focus on, the big ones like, Nick Chubb and Deshaun Watson. But you look along that offensive line, and we said it at the time, the idea that Bill Callahan was getting, third, fourth team guys off the street. And it wasn't a matter of, oh, they're going to play a perfect game, but just enough so they weren't a liability. And, this guy is clearly one of the best offensive line coaches in the game. And during a period where the Browns have already shook some things up, Alex Van Pelt is gone. Stump Mitchell is gone. Their tight ends coach is gone as well. So, I mean, there's, some significant changes, but I think Bill Callahan was one that we didn't anticipate, in large part because we didn't anticipate Brian Callahan getting the job. But, that's another issue that they have. So Bill Callahan is out. Browns are going to be in search of an offensive line coach. Obviously, the offensive coordinator job goes to Ken Dorsey. And let me be I need to address this because last week I simply said that if I were to make a list, and again, it doesn't matter what I think in terms of Kevin Stefanski and those guys in the building, what they're looking for. I don't know what it is they're looking for. But I said at the time, like, if I were to make a list of the top OC candidates, I probably wouldn't have Dorsey right at the top. Doesn't mean he's not capable. Doesn't mean that he's not exactly what they're looking for. And ultimately he was because of his past, coaching a guy like Cam Newton, coaching a guy like Josh Allen. I mean, that ultimately is what this move is all about. It's why AVP was let go and subsequently goes to New England. It's why Ken Dorsey's brought in. And what's interesting about this is I think after this year, Kevin Stefanski's proven himself. In football circles, people know that he's capable and he did an incredible job this year. Fans do as well, but I think fans might look at this and go, is there still, and I think this is somewhat legit, is there a little bit of uncertainty with Stefanski and Deshaun Watson? And I don't mean like stirring the pot, like they're not on the same page, but there's, I think, a certain level or a certain individual, a certain offensive coach type. Dorsey was that guy, the shotgun quarterback, mobile quarterback, also getting the most out of him through the air. Josh Allen and Cam Newton. So clearly they're looking at him as that guy to bring him along. And I think it speaks to whether he's calling plays or not, the Browns need every last help they can get in terms of getting the most out of Deshaun Watson, because make no mistake, that's what this was all about. Both the the letting go of some of these guys, and then the bringing in of some of these guys, in particular here, Ken Dorsey. We'll take a break. We'll be back with more of the Chico Bormann Show, including we got some hoops news, great news involving the Cleveland Cavaliers as that continues, and we've got some other tidbits as well we'll get to. Chico Bormann Show, more to come right here on the Big Play Sports Network. We are back on the Chico Bormann Show here on the Big Play Sports Network. Good to have you along here. Follow us on Twitter at Chico Show CLE. Also on YouTube, you can find us, Chico Bormann Show. If you're not a subscriber, hit that button, and we thank you for that. You'll be all set to go there. All right, we're going to get to NBA and get to the Cavs here in a moment. Again, another victory. They're fourth in a row, 12 out of 13. Unfortunate happening with Jared Allen missing out. The streak comes to an end in the double-double. Donovan Mitchell was outstanding. We'll get to all of that in a moment. But I do want to just to put a capper on last week's championship games. And, Bohm, I said, look, I'll be the first to say, I was openly – I wouldn't say rooting. I said this last week. Like, I'm more about give me a good game. And if the best game is going to be Kansas City and San Francisco, then give me Kansas City and San Francisco. I did not think – I think my picks were Baltimore and Detroit, so it tells you what I know. But I thought Lamar Jackson that's the story that I was rooting for. Like I've said it before, I'll say it again. You don't have to take my Browns fan card for saying it. I think I like Lamar Jackson's game. I like his story. Ultimately, though, he laid an egg. I mean, I don't know exactly what Todd Monken's game plan was, too. Like, he laid an egg, but, I mean, you throw into triple coverage, and when things started to get sped up, I saw a stat that the Ravens this year, that Lamar Jackson had not had to attempt to pass this year with a deficit of more than 8 points, which tells you, again, that defense has been – because, two-time MVP. He's 2-4 in 6 playoff games. Well, Peyton Manning was the same through 6 games too, his first 6 seasons as well. Peyton Manning didn't have the defense that Lamar Jackson had, and that does count in all of this. But in the end, I mean, Monken laid an egg, and Lamar Jackson, like it seemed like when he got sped up and the pressure got ratcheted up, he just couldn't answer the bell. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. As much as I wanted to see him do well, he didn't do well, and that's part of the legacy now.
Chico, did you happen to see Odell Beckham Sr. putting
Yes.
Lamar Jackson on blast?
Yes, I did.
Boy, I mean, I kind of didn't expect it, but I kind of expected it. It's just like after everything that ensued with Baker and all of that with Odell Beckham Sr., it's just so ironic to me to see that come again. But you're talking about the NFL MVP here. And as a person, I do feel I empathize with Lamar, and I feel like he does deserve some success. At the same time, I'm a big Patty Mahomes fan. I feel
Patty.
like
Ooh, look at you.
I feel like it's great to be in the presence of and be able to witness historical greatness, Chico. Like, this is what we're seeing is someone who is on a very quick trajectory on pace to surpass Tom Brady as the GOAT. He's not there yet, but like he continues this trend, being in those conference championships and Super Bowls year after year. Like, he's on that trajectory at the very least.
So I love talking about this because Patrick Mahomes right now, and this is not to say, like you said, he's not Tom Brady, but he's in for me, a very special class of guys that I don't want to bet against. I won't bet against. Like, nothing he does is going to surprise me. So, like MJ, Tiger, Belichick, and Brady, like those are guys that you at your own peril, go ahead and bet against. That's how I feel about Patrick Mahomes. That's how I feel about Travis Kelce. San Francisco, I think, is open as like a 5-point favorite, and they should. I mean, I think they're the better team, but again, at your own peril, you are going to bet against, not literally, figuratively, but maybe literally, against Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Good luck with that. I mean, because not a lot of people, myself included, would feel real strong about it.
I mean, we heard Edholm hammer home that point, Chico. Like, I'm not betting against Patrick Mahomes. This has been the worst roster that he's ever had in his professional career. and yet he still always finds a way to put it together. And we saw Kelce step up. I think the majority of people thought Travis Kelce was clearly showing that he's on his way down. He's on his way out of the league playing right the way he's playing right now. But he has really emerged again as that prime premier tight end for Patrick Mahomes in an offense that has been reeling all season. And now, I mean, that's the most dangerous duo in football in terms of that connection and the impact that they make together. And I don't know any way that like Patrick Mahomes is going to allow this team to lose this game. I think I would be pretty surprised. As loaded as that 49ers team is, as you said, better on paper, no question about it. But there's also no question that Patrick Mahomes is on another level from Brock Purdy, and that makes a big difference.
Yeah, it's what elite players do. And I mean, Travis Kelce might already be the best tight end to ever play. That's up for debate. Patrick Mahomes is not there, but like I said, he's on that trajectory, he's on that pace, but he's already a guy that you say, I don't want to bet against that guy. It's bad, and look, it doesn't erase the regular season. Like the Chiefs looked bad. But another guy that I don't want to bet against right now, how about Andy Reid? I mean, right now do you really feel comfortable, even if San Francisco is the favorite, and they are, and they should be, you got to ask yourselves, be honest, are you comfortable right now betting against Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, and Andy Reid? Andy Reid coached his ass off these last 2 weeks, I think. I mean, the whole staff did, but Andy Reid was taking a little bit of flack, and man, they can't figure it out. We say it all the time. When it matters the most, postseason, this is where legacies are cemented. This is where great players, and it's why Lamar, unfortunately, he's not in that top tier of quarterbacks because he still hasn't done that at that level at that time. But man, no way in hell I'm betting against Kansas City and those guys. No way. All right, I'll tell you what. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We're going to talk some Cavaliers basketball. I'm promising that. We'll talk some Cavs basketball. Another win last night. This team, 12 out of 13. They just keep doing what they do, all the while getting the likes of Darius Garland back. Evan Mobley didn't play last night against Memphis. But, man, this team just continues to impress. And while I have preached patience about J.B. Bickerstaff, there's a guy on the college level that I've lost all patience with. So for you that say, well, you don't want to, you're too all about, letting it play out and giving these guys a chance. There's one guy right now at the collegiate level that needs to go ASAP. We'll talk about that as well. More to come on the Chico Bormann Show here on the Big Play Sports Network. Welcome back, Chico Bormann Show here on the Big Play Sports Network. Good to have you along, and good to be a fan of the Cleveland Cavaliers. They win again last night in Memphis, and they have now won 4 straight, 12 of their last 13. I wonder now if, with football season, I know we have the Super Bowl, and pretty big game, but with the Browns season over, baseball still a little ways to go, and some people, are excited about baseball. Some people don't care. Some people, whatever. I wonder if this is when the Cavs really start to take hold. And it's not to say fans have just dismissed them, but look, there's been a lot of criticism after the playoffs last year. There's been a lot of, this year, then they have all the injuries, and when Mobley and Garland go down, there's no way they're going to be able to keep this going. And that's all they've done, and then some. Darius Garland has been back for a couple of games. Evan Mobley, by the way, didn't play last night. They're really monitoring his minutes, as they should. But, yeah, there's still going to be, and I'm not saying that this is a finished product and see Darius and Evan coming back. But what you're seeing is, you're still seeing that ball movement. You're still seeing the great ball movement. You're still seeing guys shooting a lot of threes. You're seeing Donovan Mitchell, and this is really, really important. Donovan Mitchell, because I don't know how Darius is, and we talked to Chris Fedor about this. It wasn't so much, how are they going to incorporate Evan Mobley? Okay, yeah, you're worried about that. You're more concerned about Darius Garland, because I think when Donovan Mitchell has the basketball in his hands, and by the way, Eastern Conference Player of the Month, there's only one other player to ever get that in the history of the Cavaliers. Boom, I'll give you just one guess because you should only need one guess to Eastern Conference Player of the Month.
LeBron James?
Yeah, it would be Bronny. Yeah, LBJ, that's right. LeBron James. LeBron James.
LeBron James?
LeBron James. Yeah, so, I mean, Donovan Mitchell, Eastern Conference Player of the Month, but okay, we've seen him score a bunch, but while Garland was out, like, he had no problem facilitating. You'd see the line of, 30 points and 12 assists, and I don't know ultimately how this ends up, but I'm telling you right now, I think now that Brown's season is over with, and you still have Nuggets and coaching news and the draft's coming up, and I get all of that, but fans, I'm telling you, if you haven't really paid much attention to the Cavaliers, this team is so much fun to watch, okay? And, yeah, I know you're still maybe a little bit spurned from last year. I get it. But, man, oh, man, I mean, they keep finding a way. Jared Allen, he was a guy that many people wanted out of town after last year's playoff series. All he did is set the franchise record for double-doubles. And, by the way, kind of got screwed. It ended last night at 16. I know Fedor feels like he jinxed him. He did a Chico special. When Jared Allen went out, he had, 17 points? He had 17 and 10. So originally he had the double-double, and the streak went to 17. Then in Secaucus, New Jersey, where those hermetically sealed envelopes sit, in Secaucus, New Jersey, not in Memphis, they said, take that last rebound away. He didn't have full control, so it's 17 and 9. Well, at that time, you're still thinking he's going to get it earlier in the third. That's the second quarter. Jared Allen didn't play again because he had the ankle injury. Hopefully not that serious, but the double-double streak ends at 16. That's been amazing. But, man, it's just so much fun. So much fun to watch these guys. And Bohm, I know it's all about the postseason. That's fine. But when I told people a while ago, just let this thing play out. Don't worry about Donovan Mitchell and where he might. I don't know where he might end up. He might not be with the Cavaliers next year. But I said, let's enjoy this year. And if you're trying to enjoy this year, how can you not? When you look at how this team plays, despite all of the obstacles, you have no choice but to give J.B. Bickerstaff and everybody a ton of credit. Yes, it's all about the postseason, but what they have done at this point, and now 12 out of 13 after that victory last night against Memphis, is absolutely unbelievable.
It is all about the postseason, but this is also a really crucial time for the Cavaliers, as I've heard Fedor pointed out. And after a couple of nights ago, of the first night of their doubleheader here this week, that was their 12th game with that starting lineup playing together. Like, they barely have any experience together. So this is a really crucial time for them to continue to build that chemistry. And the sky is truly the limit. Like, we don't know the full potential of this offense yet because, frankly, it's too early to tell.
Yeah, to your point, they waited weeks to get the full lineup back, and then Evan Mobley sat last night because of that. All right, real quick, do I have time? Or do we want to make? Yeah, I've got to say this. So, like, I've been patient, and I think justifiably so, with J.B. Bickerstaff. You haters out there, you'll always be haters. Whatever, that's fine. Boom. What is going on in Columbus with the Ohio State basketball Buckeyes? Like, they aren't just like, they're terrible. Do you know January's over with, right? January's over with. Ohio State last year in the month of January, how many wins did they have, Bohm? I'm putting you on the spot, I know.
I know that it was a disappointing number.
0. That's there is no more negative, but that's 0. How many wins did they have this January that just concluded? 1. You've had 1 win in the month of January the last 2 years. You're at Ohio, and this is not like Ohio State football program. I get all of that, but this is beyond ridiculous. These guys, and it's the same story. They come out, they play well for about 12 minutes, and then they're done. That's it. They don't make shots. At the end of the games, you keep hearing the guys say, well, it's the little things. Well, what have I said with the Browns for the longest time going into this season? Little things become big things. Well, now the little things become big things, and the big thing is Chris Holtmann has to go. There, I said it. Chico, you never want a guy fired. J.B. Bickerstaff, keep him. Chris Holtmann has to go. I'm not saying like right now because I don't know how it's going to benefit them, but this is enough is enough. And I've tried to be patient with Holtmann, but this is bad. They're not coming out to the shot, which that's a whole nother situation, like the atmosphere, and that's not on them. But you got to win games. They haven't won on the road in 14 games. 14. They play at Carver Hawkeye Arena tonight. You like their chances? I don't. Chris Holtmann, adios, bro. I mean, we tried. We gave you a long leash. We're not treating this like Ohio State football, but for God's sake, you're making a lot of money. It is Ohio State. It is the Big Ten. You've got to do better than no Sweet 16 appearance in 10 years. I mean, that is just ludicrous. Bye-bye. Not bye-bye. We're going to say farewell here in a moment. But the Chico Bormann Show, we had a lot of fun today talking to Eric Edholm out in Mobile. You can check us out. Check that out. Also, and Bohm, I don't know. You tell me. Am I being too harsh? Because I'm usually accused of the opposite. Am I being too harsh with Holtmann?
It feels like it's happened too much, Chico, every single year. It's just like hot start, and then that's all out the window by January.
Yeah, enough's enough. I mean, 1 win in 2 years in the month of January, 14 straight losses on the road. No, you can't have it. All right, so we'll be back with you again next week. Again, thanks to Eric Edholm, and thanks to all of you, and Michael Bohm for producing. Bohm made a one hell of an entrance today. That's all we'll say, and we'll do it again next week. Until then, I'm Mike Chico Bormann. This is the Chico Bormann Show right here on the Big Play Sports Network.